You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Cathy Biase, and I'm an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. It's not uncommon, in fact, I hear about this all the time, that we don't feel well, yet our blood work is normal, and we don't know where to go with this. Something's not right, but everything is pointing to a healthy person. Conventional blood work looks for disease, but what if the real story is actually hidden in the details? On our show today, we explore functional blood work, a deeper, more holistic way of interpreting lab results. Instead of just looking for illness, functional testing helps us understand where the body may be out of balance, often long before symptoms become serious. From nutrient deficiencies and hormone imbalances to hidden inflammation and stress markers, functional blood work can be a powerful tool for creating truly personalized health plans. On my show today, my guest is Kristin Grayce McGary, and we are going to talk about how functional blood work goes beyond conventional testing, why optimal ranges matter more than normal ranges, and how you can use this knowledge to take control of your health journey. Kristin is an internationally recognized health and lifestyle alchemist, author, and speaker. She weaves together 28 years of experience, education, and wisdom, and compassion to empower you to reconnect, reawaken, and rejuvenate on all levels. She is an authority on autoimmunity, functional blood chemistry analysis, thyroid and gut health, family health care, food as medicine, integrating mind, body, spirit, and health, and soul care, and is initiated into several lineages of shamanic practices. In her alchemical practice of individualized health and soul care, she has mastered dozens of modalities, including acupuncture and Asian medicine, advanced craniosacral and somato-emotional release, neural and perineural therapy, homeopathy, functional healthcare, family constellation, medical qigong, psychosomatics, meditation, shamanic ceremony, and more. She is the author of Holistic Keto for Gut Health, a program for resetting your metabolism, and Know Your Blood, Know Your Health. Prevent disease and enjoy vibrant health through functional blood chemistry and analysis. This is a really informative show. I learned quite a lot. This is an area of health that I know very, very little about. I understand what it is. I understand the power of what it is, but it's very informative, and especially for you, our listeners. I think this is another very, very powerful tool for you to have. We talk about all of what I had just mentioned. We also talk about what to do with functional blood work once you get your results. We dabble into, here in Canada, how we can go about actually getting functional blood work done. A whole bunch of interesting topics. Do stay tuned. We will be back in just a few minutes to speak with Kristin Grayce McGary.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome back, everybody. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Kristin Grayce, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Cathy.
Well, this is a topic, to be honest, I signed up for a course in functional lab work, and I haven't actually gone to it. So the book that you have shared, or that you will be sharing with us, is something that I will definitely be taking under my wing, because I think, once people get an understanding of functional blood work and labs and what they do offer us, I think it's going to be enlightening for a lot of people. But, this isn't all that you do. So tell us a little bit more, in a broad sense of what your practice is and why functional lab work is so important to you.
Thanks for asking. Well, I do a lot, and I've mastered dozens of healing modalities over almost 3 decades because I myself needed a very holistic, comprehensive, and individualized approach, both to my health, but also to my emotional well-being and my spiritual well-being. So because of my own health journey, I dove into what I now share. So I started in Western medicine. I was even a nationally board certified EMT, and I worked in the emergency room for a short time. And I was on track to become a Western medical physician, and I got really sick and in bed, kind of sick, debilitated, with excruciating pain and extreme fatigue and trigger point muscle spasms, pain all over my body, and balance issues and brain fog and TMJ issues, gut issues. And I didn't know what was happening to me. I had been an athlete. I had been vegetarian and even vegan for a while, which I thought was very healthy. And I was confused. And so I went searching for answers. And I didn't get a lot of answers from my Western medical docs or the emergency room or blood work that they did for me. In fact, most doctors told me they thought it was in my head and they would send me to a therapist. Mm-hmm. So I go to a therapist, and then the therapist would say, this is clearly not in your head. You need help. Go back to your doctor. I felt a bit like a ping pong ball, and I trusted. And I continued my own study and really looking at all of the various layers. I would pick up little gems along the way, but no one had the full picture. And it was one of the turning points. There were several key turning points, but I'll just mention one of them was going and learning functional blood chemistry analysis. So I transitioned to Asian medicine and German biological medicine, homeopathy, electrodermal screening, herbology, and I began to get better. I had massive shifts. I released a lot of trauma. Advanced cranial sacral therapy and somato-emotional release helped me release a lot of trauma from my system. Neural injection therapy helped me in extraordinary ways. And I got well enough to be high functioning, run a practice, get back to exercising. I really felt amazing. And then I had another crash of an autoimmune disease that I believe my original symptoms were pointing to that no one found. And then I began diving into functional blood chemistry analysis. And I studied and went to classes, and then I became part of round tables where we were discussing patients, and I just devoured the information, and I started to find things in my own labs that none of my functional doctors or naturopaths had caught. And I thought, wow, I have got to master this. It will help so many people prevent suffering or help alleviate their suffering. So I dove in. But it was after I had had a lot of my own healing journey and learned many different modalities. So I believe that we are unique individuals. And yes, we kind of have a genetic, profile of human, and we are incredibly individualized beings. And how I have created the structure of my character over my life from trauma and joy and different experiences make me unique. And that alters and impacts my biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, what I eat is important, how I exercise, when and how I go to sleep. Basic lifestyle things are very important. And there are things in the unconscious, emotionally and spiritually, that most functional docs don't address. So for me, functional blood chemistry analysis became a doorway into doing deeper work, because so many of us identify with our physical bodies so strongly. So when we can see our biochemistry in front of us and have all of the dots connected or the puzzle pieces put together, it allows us to then go even deeper into the unconscious, into where things may be held or where blocks may be held, even like self-sabotage patterns or patterns of addiction or patterns of resistance can have an incredible impact on how we take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And doing just your labs, to me, isn't enough. And so I then became all of the different modalities that I needed when I was ill. So that includes Asian medicine and a form of osteopathy, advanced cranial sacral therapy, somato-emotional release, neural injection, perineural injection therapy, working with family constellation, visceral manipulation, Bruno Chickley's brain work. I use photoneural bio light therapy to work with the brain. I use frequency specific microcurrent. I'm always looking at working with the autonomic nervous system, working at a soul level as well as a physical and emotional level.
And so does that start with getting a clear picture of the physical body through the blood analysis?
Yes.
Okay.
Most people, that's where it starts.
Now, here's the dilemma. Before I ask the obvious question, the difference between conventional and functional blood work, trying to access these labs is a maze of left turns and right turns and trying to find the proper direction, at least here in Canada. To try and find someone who, because you do need to have these recommended, or you need a referral for these for these lab work, the lab work. This is an issue, and who do we go to get? I'll give you one example here. One of the tests that I really like in blood work is we talk about resistance, insulin resistance, and we always get the measure of the sugar, right? We do oh my gosh, my brain is going. The 3-month sugar analysis, HbA1c, or the fasting glucose level. Here it comes. Okay, my brain is coming back. But I like to know where insulin level is at, because that is even a deeper dive. To try and get a doctor to test that here is very difficult. So where do we look to get somebody to do this blood work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And different countries have different challenges and struggles with this. And my goal is to make it more accessible and to make it more mainstream, which is why I'm so grateful that we're having this interview. I think the more people that are educated about it and know how to ask the questions, the more empowered they are, and they can be an advocate for themselves. So where do you go? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I believe in finding a team and interviewing doctors to see if they will work with you. And saying, hey, I have, other functional docs, because I work remotely all over the world. So somebody can call me and I can be part of their team. And I can have conversations with their doctors in their own countries and talk to them about how to order these other labs, why they're important, etc. Or sometimes interviewing enough doctors, you'll find one who's willing to work with you and will order those odd tests. So it takes some empowerment. It takes some courage to go out there and start asking.
Yeah.
And finding docs that want to work with you. And in fact, a chapter in my book is about how to talk to a physician, how to ask questions in a non-threatening way, how to talk to them as if you want to be on a team with them, and that you know your own body, or you're learning your own body and you want their help with some things. So this is my strategy. And then I have had some patients pop over the border of Canada to get their labs drawn at LabCorp in the US because I can order them there. So, sometimes I have people travel to get labs done. I live in Costa Rica right now, most of the time, and I have a lab that I'm working with in a nearby city where they're giving my patients really significant discount. I don't get a kickback at all. They're just understanding that the amount of labs I want to see is unusual.
And it gets expensive. And this is the other issue. It can get to be expensive. But yes, before we deal with that, I mean, we have dealt with it a little bit, but I think it's important to have us understand the difference between functional, the blood work, functional lab blood work, and the common blood work that we get, the conventional blood work. So what's the difference?
There are several differences. And before I dive into the main differences, I'll say that just because something is called, quote unquote, functional blood work does not necessarily mean it is in alignment with what I'm going to share right now. There are plenty of people that will say this is a functional lab, and it does not align with the characteristics that I'm going to share with you.
Okay.
So I want to share that first because it's important to be an informed consumer and to ask questions. And so I will share what are several main differences between what I'm doing, what I wrote about in my book, and what conventional docs and even naturopaths and even some functional docs are doing. Just because someone is a functional medical doctor does not mean they are reading a lab, interpreting your labs according to what I'm going to share. So be an informed consumer is what I invite your listeners to become. So one of the first differences are the number of markers that I order. So I liken it to a 10,000 puzzle of your health. And if we're not ordering enough markers, it's as if all the puzzle pieces are turned upside down and we can't see them, which makes it impossible to put the puzzle together properly. So when I order 70 plus markers, I may add more. I may add genetic testing. I may add other testing for your gut. I may add other testing for heavy metals. I may add other testing for mold. I may add other testing for many different things, depending on what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. But the basics, about 70 plus markers and a urinalysis, help identify many important pieces of your health puzzle. So we turn those pieces over so we can see them, so we can begin to put it together. Now, the next differences are how we start to put it together. Secondly, are the reference ranges. Mm-hmm. So I write about this in my book. I didn't know where those reference ranges came from. And when I started learning functional blood chemistry analysis and they were showing me some different reference ranges, I thought, well, wait, why are these so different? So the reference ranges that we see in our lab, even from our naturopath, there's a reference range on the far right side. Those are based on a small group of mostly sick people, or they come from a lab test insert, or they come from a medical book that could be 25 years old. There is no mandatory update that is required by a lab. There is no mandatory collaboration between labs, between states. So different labs can actually have different reference ranges. And it can be based on 10 people that they tested randomly because a doctor thought they needed a lab done because they weren't feeling well. And these become our new reference ranges, which are I was just in shock when I learned this, because how can mostly sick people and their lab outcomes be any kind of marker of health or balance or vitality for us. It just seems crazy making. And so the reference ranges that I'm using are based more on healthy, balanced individuals than sick people, which makes them more narrow. I can find things that fall outside what I call the sick reference ranges or the Western medical sick care reference ranges. And by doing that, I can help you prevent things. I can find them 5 to 10 years before you may even have a symptom or worse, a diagnosis. And to me, that is power. That is building longevity and resiliency in your system if we can find things that early. This is the ultimate in prevention and biohacking. Like, let's find stuff before you even know what's going on. That's one in terms of those reference ranges. I can also help identify the root of things, which is quite uncommon in Western medicine. Western medicine is extraordinary at treating symptoms and disease patterns. They're not very good at preventing, and they're not skilled. They're just not trained in looking for the root. And so the reference ranges that I'm looking at help in both of those areas.
Okay.
A third difference that sets functional blood chemistry apart from a conventional Western medical lab is that I'm looking at patterns, not just isolated markers. So Cathy, you brought up a great point around wanting insulin and hemoglobin A1C and a fasting blood sugar. But to find insulin resistance years before you even know you have it, I'm looking at a full cholesterol panel. I can find predisposition or the early onset of insulin resistance by looking at patterns in a cholesterol panel, a couple other inflammatory markers, and those tests you mentioned, the insulin, the hemoglobin A1C, and fasting blood sugar. So those patterns to me are really important to identify because I can save someone from diabetes. So how we're looking at the patterns is very different than a Western medical doc. Now, some docs are looking at certain patterns, but most will look at that isolated cholesterol, total cholesterol, and start treating that only. They make no connection or association between that and blood sugar or insulin, usually. Or they're just looking at your iron, your serum iron, which is a tiny part of a full iron pattern or a full iron lab markers. There's like 4 or 5 iron markers, lab markers that I want to see to really understand what's going on if you're having any kind of anemia. See, iron anemia is only one kind. There are other kinds that can show up. And if we don't have enough markers ordered, we can't tell what's really going on. We're just guessing. So those are 3 main differences. I also, because of my training, can start to see patterns. I know it sounds woo-woo, but are actually more emotional and spiritual through a lab, believe it or not. Through someone's intake forms, a lab, looking at their body, looking at the cadence of their voice, their skin, their eyes, the wrinkles on their face. It all gives me a ton of information. I get an enormous amount of information that I can then begin asking more emotionally based, spiritually based questions around what's going on unconsciously to bring it into the forefront of their awareness so we can also work at that level. I have found in my own life and in 28 years of practice that every single symptom, everything, even if I find something in a lab that someone doesn't have a symptom for yet, everything has a psycho-spiritual emotional component. Everything, even a hangnail, everything, and I can find it.
I don't
and I
think
work
this
with my people.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I was just going to say, I don't think this idea of psycho-spiritual connecting to health is as woo-woo as it used to be. And,
Yeah.
I'm trying to have guests on the show that are making this connection in a scientific way. And so when you're saying this and connecting it with functional lab work, blood lab work, it's just another level of this. It's another level of the connectiveness between, if we just even take our thought processes and we don't even get to that spiritual word, but just thought processes and beliefs, and how they are connected to our health, I think it's becoming more and more of an important piece. And I know it maybe is a deep down, more of a dig, but I think it's an epic part of good health. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, my first question, just to prepare you, is going to be, what is health? So we'll be back in just a few minutes, everybody, to continue this great conversation.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada. A Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Cathy Biase.
Welcome back to the Health Hub, everybody. We're going to continue our conversation here with Kristin Grayce McGary. As I had mentioned, the question I wanted to come out of the gate with here is, we're getting all these labs done. We're really diving deep, but what is true health?
Yes. For me, true health is much more than just the absence of disease or symptoms. For me, true health is a kind of resiliency of your body, your mind, and your spirit.
So let me stop you for a second. So resiliency, can that come from recovering from health issues?
It can. Resiliency could be recovering from illness, recovering from exercise quickly. Yes, that's a form of resiliency. Resiliency is also recovering from emotional distress or trauma more quickly. Mm-hmm. Being able to work with adversity, and it doesn't take you full out. You have tools and strength and courage, both physically and emotionally and mentally, to be resilient and bounce back. Find your center ground again.
And that, you apply that to everybody, but everybody's picture is different.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. Someone who's 70 will have a different kind of resiliency than someone who's 40. And someone who's 40, I'm already preparing them to be 70 or 80 now. Mm-hmm. I'm already inviting them into lifestyle, exercise, nutritional ways of being that are going to support them aging with strength and grace and courage and resiliency. Some people think, oh, well, I'm 40, I'm great, or I'm 35, I'm great, or I'm 28, I'm great. I don't have joint pain, I'm smart, I can do this, I can do that. And they, in a way, waste it. They don't necessarily eat the right foods, have the best lifestyle, do the right kinds of exercise that will let them age with more grace and more resiliency.
Well, let me tell you, as someone who's not 25 or 30, those years pass very, very, very quickly. And things catch up very, very fast. And if we can lay the foundation for our younger folk to start considering, their health now and what it looks like. And I think it's coming. I think with, I guess, possibly the advent of social media and all the, the messages that are getting out there, I do hear talk from a lot of younger folk about, what can I do to, set the stage? And maybe that's because there's a lot of disease around too, and they're trying to figure it out. But you're right. I think health is something that it's such a personal thing. And that's why sometimes these markers are helpful. And then, they also painted, your health is not going to be within the same markers as everybody else's. And you may have some that are outside the lines, and that may be you, and that may be something, you want to get as much information, yes, as possible. But I think what you brought out earlier too is that resiliency is also a mindset. And you can be resilient within many aspects of health and within many portraits of health. And I think as we age, we need to always be reconsidering what our health picture looks like. I think that's a healthy piece of aging. And I think if we can all be in that mindset, we'd be much, much better off. Now, back to the lab work. We get all these markers done, the 70 different markers that you're talking about. We get our results, and then what do?
Right. Great question. I like to look at green flags, yellow flags, and red flags. And I'm comparing your lab to my 26 pages of intake forms that you filled out for me and where you are emotionally, spiritually, and energetically as well. I'm looking at your whole picture. I like to say I'm looking at the ecosystem of your being. And from there, we identify where you're doing really well, how things are working for you in a good way, in a positive way for your mind, body, and spirit. And then there might be some yellow flags. So then we're going to address where things might be borderline. Maybe it's not Western medical diagnosis of a disease state, but I'm seeing an imbalance. And I'm seeing an imbalance that in 5 years could tip over into a disease state. So we can address that immediately. So I give you my recommendations, and I even create 6 or 12-month programs for people. We're talking lifestyle. We're talking nutrition. We're looking at self-sabotaging patterns or patterns of addiction or old unresolved trauma in the unconscious where the body may be experiencing symptoms due to that. We're looking at your exercise, et cetera, your sleep routine, et cetera. And then I'm making recommendations and helping you stay accountable and giving you the support you need so you can succeed. So you don't have to do it all on your own. We're not all wired to do it on our own. We have mammalian brains, and we're actually wired to be in community and support each other. And that's something I'm very passionate about in healthcare, soul care, is being one of those empowering people for the patient. Mm-hmm. And then we might find red flags, and red flags would merit some immediate changes if that person chose, depending on their health goals. So I really look at the whole picture and then create an individualized program based on that. Now, some people are type A kind of overachievers, and I can print out that program and say, go for it. And they say, thank you. I'll see you in 3 months. But other people need every other week or weekly or once a month check-ins and support. They have questions. They need to change their supplements. This didn't work for them, but that did, et cetera. So some people need more empowerment and more education. And I do that as well. So every practitioner, to me, lab work, although it is medical, it's also an art. How we connect with our patients, Cathy, is an art. It's an art form. Our bedside manner, how we weave the different modalities we've learned is an art. How we see and feel what our patients are going through, how we empathize, how we offer feedback and guidance, and even meditation or qigong practices or yoga. This is an art form. So there's no cookie cutter approach that I found to really work. It can work superficially. It can work to some degree, but it doesn't go as deep as what I like and what I needed personally.
Okay. Another question that is sort of, brass tacks here. This can get expensive, right? So lab work can get very expensive. It's not going to be through the conventional channels. Here in Canada, our conventional labs are supported through a healthcare system. But these functional labs are outside of that. So it can get very expensive. How often do you suggest people get their lab work done?
I encourage people to get it done once a year.
Once
get
only. Okay.
An functional lab. And if you find a lot of markers off, if they are borderline problems or full on according to Western medical reference ranges, if they're out of those ranges, you're in the sick care zone, then we have some work to do. And then you may need to get a lab done maybe again in 4 to 6 months. Okay.
We
But
can narrow
having
that down though, right? We can narrow the lab work down. Okay.
Narrow it down. Yes. Having a baseline is really important.
So we need to align with a practitioner. We can't just go into our doctor and say, I need some functional lab work done. Or are there tests that you can say to us right now, this is what I think that you should be asking your doctor for? Or does that not make any sense at all?
I'm all about you asking your physician for all of the labs that I want to see. I'm happy to have you do that. There's only been 2 people in my career that could get them covered by insurance, and they were both very high up in the military.
Okay.
So way to go, military, for taking care of your people and allowing a more comprehensive lab. But for the most part, insurance doesn't pay for it. And the healthcare system in Canada, sometimes with the right doctor who can really advocate for you, will sometimes pay for it. For example, I want a full iron panel of 5 markers. I want to see inflammatory markers like your homocysteine levels and your CRP and your ferritin, which is part of a full iron panel. I want to check a full cholesterol panel, not just your total cholesterol. I want to see a full thyroid panel, which is approximately 10 markers. I like to order 10 markers of thyroid function. And in my clinical experience, I have not yet met an endocrinologist who does this. I've met an endocrinologist who will only order a TSH because they believe that was the standard of care. That's it. 1 marker out of 10. And it's actually what the pituitary spits out, not what the thyroid's doing. It can help tell us what's happening with thyroid, but on its own, it's almost like nothing. Mm-hmm. So imagine just using that as a marker when there are 8 other tests that I want to see to understand what's going on, not just with your thyroid, but with your cortisol levels, with other hormone levels, with exogenous or endogenous levels of estrogen. There are many things that I can tell from a full thyroid panel, including how is your pituitary functioning or your parathyroid. So to ask the doc to do a full thyroid panel and to really get 10 markers is extraordinary in helping your health and seeing what could be going on. There are lots of women that have undiagnosed thyroid issues that really need someone who understands how to interpret that full comprehensive thyroid panel.
Yeah, see, here in Canada, you could issue us blood work, and then I personally don't know off the hop what you would do with that requisition. I'm just trying to think of the process here. I should look into that a little bit more deeply.
You mean in Canada, you'd need to get a requisition from a physician in Canada and then go to lab that practitioner works with.
Yeah.
In the United States, different. I contract with a third party that works with LabCorp. So for me, people just diddy-bop over to LabCorp.
Yeah, so this is like I know what the functional blood lab work is. Obviously, I've had a few tests on my own, but I guess they were within what was acceptable here. But I don't know. I'll have to find that out. I don't know if we got a requisition from the States, where that would lead us here.
Yeah,
which is it stymies us here.
Right, you would have to come to the U.S. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you'd have to diddy-bop over to a LabCorp across the border to get your blood drawn there, unless there's some other functional doc that can draw labs up in Canada, and you could connect with that doctor and have them write that requisition. And
yeah, because our lab, we'd have to find a lab that understands what is being asked. Anyways, that's
no, basic. No. What we're asking for is basic. The lab would know. The lab would know. That's not the lab would absolutely know how to run these basic things.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna do some research into that.
I do work with a company doing genetic testing, and they're based in Canada. And I've gotten great genetic test results from them. And I'm happy to share their info with you if that's ever of interest.
Sure. I mean, you can go ahead and share it now.
I'd have to look them up. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. Where do you see the future of lab testing and blood lab, functional lab work in the future? Are you see it opening up a bit, even test by test?
I do see it opening up, and I do see prices coming down. I also see a lot of AI involvement, which I have some concerns about. I think AI is brilliant and they can find things in a lab and then spit out basic recommendations that are cookie cutter protocol, but they cannot feel and they cannot use intuition and they cannot connect at a heart level. And so it can be useful. I know functional docs that are using technology to help their practice so they can do labs for more people and just hand their patient, the results with, a green column, a yellow column, and a red column with some basic recommendations underneath. But it loses the heart of medicine. It loses the art form, in my opinion. So I think it's useful and it's very partial and incomplete. And we are moving in that direction, and it will bring pricing down. And I think it's partially beneficial. It's just incomplete. And I think people will fall through the cracks of that model, just as they're falling through the cracks of the Western medical model. And I hope to be one of the practitioners who can help those people and pick up the pieces.
So to complete this circle, then you get the blood work, you get somebody to order the blood work, you get the blood work done, you get the results. To take these results and advocate for yourself with a conventional doctor may be tricky, I'm going to assume. I don't know how you tell people to advocate for themselves.
Almost impossible. They won't
there you
understand.
Go. So then to complete this circle, we need to find a practitioner like you that will understand what the blood work is saying. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you're in the US and happen to be listening, I do that in the US. And then I do have people from all over the world send me their labs. Even if it's not complete, I can find things, but I prefer it to be complete. And so I'm always happy to share my list of basic markers that I would like to see so that people can go back to their docs and advocate for themselves. But yes, then people come to me, they bring their labs to me, and I do a comprehensive deep dive into those labs and that person. They fill out my intake forms. And then we meet and I record a Zoom meeting and I go through line by line and I explain exactly what I see. And I connect it to their lifestyle, their nutrition, their health goals. And then I make my recommendations. And sometimes it's just a few recommendations and sometimes it's pages. And some people are type A and they just go for it. They do all my recommendations and they come back in 6 or 12 months and they're doing great. And other people need more support, more empowerment, more hand-holding. So I create 6-month and 12-month programs to keep people accountable, to give them empowerment and support that's very individualized for their lifestyle and their health goals.
Now, if you get the results from someone's panel, and there's a need for medication, where do you go with that?
I get docs on my team. So I love working on a team with other physicians because I can't prescribe drugs and drugs aren't always necessary for people. And when they are, I want to have a doctor on the team who's willing to work with us to share their expertise, their knowledge for the best of the patient, for the highest good. So we can add all of our gifts so that the patient has even better outcomes. So I love being on a team with other docs that like working together.
And do you create your own team, or is that, so my cardiologist says, would like to talk to you sort of idea?
Great. Yeah, that's fine. Either way, it depends where the person is living and who I know in that area, or if they're already well established with a doctor that they love, who's very open and is like, yes, let's have a meeting. So it can be both. It can be both. Or there are some times where a doctor will say no, and I will just empower the patient to have conversations with that doctor, give them the information so that they understand what's happening in their body and have the scientific proof they need to show the doctor. There are some docs that are just living in a different reality, and they haven't read their own Western medical journals. There's a lot of great science out there. There's also some bad science that was paid for by pharmaceutical companies, but there's good science too. And when we present this to a physician, it's kind of a no-brainer. So sometimes we have to do that, but often physicians are open. They want what's best for their patients. They just didn't have the training to always know what that is.
So we're looking for open-minded physicians. That's the key here. We're getting to the end of the show, unfortunately, and I want to leave you some space to tell us about how we can reach you, about any upcoming work you might have. And I think a big thing would be the name of the book that you have already published. And I think this is a great ground zero sort of starting place for people to get to understand what this lab work is about.
Thank you. I've written several books. One is Holistic Keto for Gut Health, a program for resetting your metabolism. And it's not only about keto, that's just in the title. It's actually about healing the gut to halt, heal, or prevent autoimmune issues. And then I wrote another book, Know Your Blood, Know Your Health, Prevent Disease and Enjoy Vibrant Health Through Functional Blood Chemistry Analysis. And that's really been the topic that we've been discussing today. And it's a great book. It's for both practitioners as well as the consumer of healthcare, the patient, the client. And then my third book will be coming out hopefully next year, early next year. It's completed. It's just in the final editing phases. And that book is on blocks to healing. You may have met people, Cathy, that have done all these things and nothing's really helped. Well, there are blocks to healing that I've been identifying and learning about for the past almost 30 years that I've put into a book. And there's a questionnaire at the front of the book so people can be guided to which chapters may be most useful to them, depending on what their symptoms are and their blocks. So that'll be coming out. And I also own and run a mini regenerative retreat center in Costa Rica. So I do private one-on-one retreats, and I also do small groups here. And I work with people through functional blood chemistry analysis. I'm an acupuncturist. I do all of these different modalities and more that I mentioned in the beginning of our interview. And I create an incredibly therapeutic container in nature where you can reconnect to yourself and unplug from social media and the busyness, the go, 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 the stress, so that you build and learn new techniques, new capacities to being in that world in a more resilient, strong way with more ease. And there are many different modalities and kind of rituals and ceremonies. I work with the 5 elements. I work with medical Qigong. I'm also a psychedelic therapist. So there are different ways in which we can empower the client, the patient. And I do that in a really beautiful retreat setting also. Wonderful. I have a website. It's my full name, KristinGrayceMcGary.com. That is spelled KristinGrayceMcGary. And I do offer a 20-minute free optimal wellness consultation to see if lab work is right for you and if I can help you, if I can empower you in some way around your health or your life. I recently did a couples retreat here for a beautiful couple, and they had profound experience and healed some old junk between the two of them, and they're really thriving. Before that, I had a best friend retreat. 2 best friends came and did beautiful work here and had so much fun. And they have both gone home and made some pretty courageous, empowering choices, decisions that have really leveled up their lives and created more freedom and joy, which is just so exciting for me. It's very rewarding. So I'm also working here in Costa Rica and inviting people here. I'm also licensed in the state of Arizona and Colorado, and I do go back to both of those places and see patients as well.
Beautiful. Well, we will definitely put your website in the show notes. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I love this perspective on health. I think it's something that is not as new as it used to be, for sure. I think it's coming into more of the health landscape, and I congratulate you for all of your work and pushing this movement through. So I hope everybody, you've learned a lot about functional blood lab work. And any questions, please do reach out to Kristen Grayce, because it's a complicated area for sure. But anyways, Kristen Grayce, thank you so much for being on our show. And everybody, we will talk to you next week on The Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase, here on Radio Maria Canada.